What's up, everybody? Podcast time.
Yo.
Yo, yo.
Good morning.
Jamie, Tony, Caleb,
Yo.
hanging out in here. 3 of the OGs, been around here for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Caleb was a little fella.
Little fella. We got our Christmas decorations out. Tony thought these were Christmas decorations. Red and green.
Yep.
Got a little purple in it.
This is an all black room.
That
I'm
was
just
a
trying
little
to add some
Lego
color.
poinsettia.
Little color. Got a little candle, little scent going on in here.
Yeah. Upgrades.
Upgrades. Lot of stuff happening in the world around us, and last couple of podcasts have been we talked to a couple of missionaries, and then we had a fun one kind of mixed in there, and so it's been very these opportunities we talked about with Angie and Maddie about her, she's been around here for a while as well, but her protection over the church. And I thought to myself, I would love to I love your perspective of things, and I don't know that people watching this fully grasp your wisdom. And my dad used to talk about your wisdom all the time, and this is going to be interesting for me. I'm going to play with this.
It's hard not to.
I'm probably going to break something. I'm not sure what or how that goes on, but I apologize in advance to everybody, whoever made this. Who made this?
Me.
You put it together?
I did.
Good job, bud.
I try.
Oh, and it moves. Neat. Oh, you said there's more to this?
Yeah,
No.
but I was not trying to spend my entire work day today building Legos. I
Good
just
job.
wanted to get a little set going for some
Good job.
color.
I
It's
like
an
it.
all black room. What am I supposed
No,
to do? We
what
got
caused
nothing.
you to buy this Lego set specifically?
So I looked up things to have behind a speaker in videos, like a bunch of
Okay, yeah.
church, and it's succulents. But then I was like, I ain't buying no succulent plants.
This is succulents?
They're Lego succulents.
I like it.
Okay.
I like it. Very interesting.
And I got candles that look manly and masculine because
Oh, yeah.
they're
Yeah.
all black.
Lavender. This is lavender woods.
Makes me want to do push-ups. Just smell
I got one that smells like the inside of a Western boot store.
Awesome.
It's called
I
leather.
love that smell.
You still working out every day?
4 days a week.
4 days a week.
Yeah. I take Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off.
You preached, I don't know how many times ago it was, but where you talked about working out, and you talked about the first time you make an excuse. How did you say it? Do you remember the exact way you phrased it? Can't remember.
No idea.
But
That's been years ago.
yeah, years ago.
Breaking the cycle. I remember preaching that.
So good. So good.
Yeah. And listen, I have broken, like I've tried to do it consistently since then, but there was one year I ended up with tendonitis in my elbows and just couldn't break free of that, and so I stopped for like a year.
Yeah.
And but then got back on the horse and been doing it consistently for probably 2 years.
Last time you were on the podcast, I think it was you and your wife and my wife and I, and we were talking about who you were as just a human and your faithfulness and giving and your faithfulness, and you've just always been such a, even back whenever, like I said, back in the wee days of, early on in having jobs, and you were such a consistent, faithful giver even way back then. And God's done absolutely miraculous things inside of your life. And, before we were ever in a place of ministry, paid, we'll call it paid ministry,
Sure, yeah.
Before we were ever in a place like that, we were doing ministry in the local church, but we still believed in tithing and giving. And so don't turn me off yet. If those of you are like, oh God, I talk about giving, let me kind of lead into some conversation. So we just got to a presidential election, and one of the locally, one of the things on the ballot was a 1% or one, I forgot the exact name they're calling it, but basically a penny tax. And it was set aside to help build roads, specifically a road from Conway-ish.
Yeah. There was tons of them.
217 all the way to 17?
No, 544 to Bucksport. Is that the one you're talking about?
544 to Bucksport. Okay, yeah.
That was the bridge over Conway.
Gotcha. Bridge over Conway, yeah. $2.5 billion
Yeah.
increase.
I mean, there was probably 35 roads and then a bunch of paved of dirt roads, stuff like that. But that was the big one that I heard.
So somebody asked me, was I voting for it? And I said, no. And they were like, I can't believe you're not voting for better roads. And my response was 31.
Mm-hmm.
That's my response.
Yeah.
31 was supposed to go all the way to Georgetown.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to happen here in this process, knowing our government and what happened, terrible way to phrase it. Potentially what could happen from a history of things that we've seen, like 31, is they're going to come from Bucksport and they're going to get to 501 and dump everybody out into 501, never make it to 544, and then it's going to be the same chaos it is now.
Yeah, there's things in society that, government has to do.
Yep.
Police force, the army, the military, all that stuff. That's why we pay taxes, to defend ourselves as a nation. But man, I wish that roads were something that they did not have control of, because no matter where you are in the country, there's places where it just doesn't even. Roads don't work. Roads are dilapidated.
Like Florida has no state income tax?
No income tax. Yeah.
So where are the taxes coming to pay for their roads? Because they're like building new bridges all over the place.
Yeah, most states that have no income tax, they have a higher sales tax, so that the people coming in, which was the selling point.
That's what they were trying to say here.
Oh yeah, all the tourists will pay, and the tourists would pay for a good portion of it. But if it's an either or situation, 100% do a sales tax and don't tax my income anymore to build roads. For sure, do that. But listen, I'm a fan of doing away with income tax altogether and doing sales tax, because then it's.
Wonder why South Carolina's never went down that path. I know Texas is like that, right? There's a few states like that.
Texas, Florida. I was about to name out a few more that I think, but I don't want to say.
I remember like NBA players would be like, "Oh, they're going to go sign in Texas because there's no income tax."
Yep.
And actually, their contract, instead of, if they're signing a $20 million contract, if they're signing that in with the Bulls, then it's actually only like a $14 million contract. But if they sign it with the Mavericks, then it's like they get all $20 million of it.
Yeah.
The states are Alaska, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming.
Wow, that's way more.
Wow. Tennessee has no income tax?
I don't want to show my ignorance, but I was about to say Delaware. That was the one that was on my.
I think Delaware has no sales tax, right? Because you could buy something for $1.99 and it's $1.99.
I think that's what it is with Delaware.
Yeah. I think Delaware has no
That's a lot of
sales
states.
tax. That's a lot of states.
And listen, there's been people running for president on that of, hey, no.
I think Donald Trump kind of mentioned it there at the end
He
towards
mentioned
his.
I believe Ben Carson.
Delaware does not impose a state or local sales tax.
Sales tax, yeah. Ben Carson, he was one that ran on the no income tax, increasing sales tax.
Which I'm all for. I love it.
Yeah, it just makes sense. It's a flat tax. Everybody talks about, let's tax the millionaires. Let's tax this tax. To me, it evens the playing field.
Yeah, there's no tax breaks then, because you're just
doing it on what you buy.
Doing what you buy.
So
if you don't buy anything, you don't pay as much sales tax.
Yeah.
If you grow your own corn,
it's a common sense approach that when people don't embrace that, you just look at it and be like, you're getting something somewhere.
Yeah.
There's some kickbacks, and I'm not accusing anybody or anything, but there's something underlying here as to why you won't take this common sense approach.
Politics is hard.
Yeah.
For us specifically, because we're in the church, and there's
what
this
you're talking about.
There's this weird balance of we can't talk about politics versus we care about politics because it is our country's future, versus certain things inside of politics are absolutely scriptural and biblical. We talk. You're very passionate about abortion. I am as well. It is one of those things that cannot be, for me, and I had a social media post about this, it cannot be a political issue.
Yeah.
This cannot be a platform that people build their governance on. Like, this cannot be where we're at as a culture.
Yeah.
That, and honestly, like, when we're recording this, President Trump has officially won the nomination of presidents. It's been declared.
Yeah.
But when this goes out, who knows what will happen? He may, some states have revoted. Who knows what's going to happen? Anyways, here in this moment, President Trump has won that. And what I keep hearing, what I'm seeing on social media is people are saying he's going to take away our reproductive rights. And it's like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
There's a girl, we were on the way home from hunting last night, Carson and I, and there's this girl, we were listening to talk radio, never listen to talk radio except for random moments like this. And this lady calls in crying because she couldn't have kids, and so she had to, on both of her kids, had to do IVF.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, no, my I would have never had kids. My mom would have never had grandkids now that he's voted in. I'm like, I'm confused.
Yeah, for me, on either side, I'm not endorsing Trump or Harris or Republicans.
No, we're talking abortion.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like on either side of the issue, this can't be the political stance. Like, this can't be what we run on. This can't be, I mean, just the amount of utter nonsense that gets spewed. I don't care what side you're on.
Sure.
To just gain people to your side without looking at the facts, it's astounding.
Yeah, I honestly, we always talk about the rape and incest number.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1.5% of all abortions happen because of rape and incest.
Yeah.
And yet that is the first thing that people bring up.
100%.
I think if it is the health of the mother, it's actually less than that.
Mm-hmm.
And
for me, I've always taken a lot more simple approach. You've got those stats and, you know, all the different stats that people throw around. And I get it back in the 60s and 70s where this became more of a prevalent issue of, yeah, it's a fetus, you know, it's just a lump of cells, all this stuff. But with the technology we have today,
correct,
you can see the baby doing baby things with these 3D images.
you can see the heartbeat. You can
see all these things.
Everything about
10 weeks, you got heartbeats, all these things. So for me, we've progressed scientifically enough that the question right now shouldn't be all these ancillary things of, oh, how many weeks is it viable? All these crazy things. Is it alive?
Yeah.
Is the baby alive? And back in the 60s and 70s, they didn't have all that. They had, you know, nowhere near the knowledge we have today on it. So that's the core issue. I'm astounded that and that's what sides do. You know, when they want to debate something, they throw in emotion, they color it one way, they color it the other way. But to me, that is the only issue. Is it alive? And if it is murder okay? I don't know of hardly anybody who would say that's okay.
Yeah.
That's the issue for me. And I sent you a clip recently of somebody on the left, and it's like now it became clear. And the quote was this, that basically, they think it's murder. And you know what? It's just a kind of murder that I'm okay with. That was literally the quote from this guy. And how have we devolved into that place to where originally they were saying, no, it's not alive. It's not alive. It's just a lump of cells. To now, it's like, okay, fine, it is alive. But I'm just okay with murdering it.
Yeah.
And as a society, I mean, you look at historically when societies devolve into, you know, child sacrifices and things like that. I mean, a child sacrifice that you read about by these just horrible civilizations in the Bible and throughout history. You know, you see these barbaric civilizations in these practices, and we think that we're so far removed. Yeah. We think, oh my goodness, they're so crazy. We would never do that. I mean, we're 9 months away from that. You know, we're the baby inside the womb and outside the womb. We're doing it. We're doing it now. We're you know, child sacrifice I wrote a paper in college about it, and I still remember one quote, and it was, we sacrifice the innocents at the god of convenience, and that's what we do right now.
What about people who would, you've adopted 2 children?
Yes.
What about people who would say, it's easy for you to have a stance on this. What about people who would say, well, the church needs to do a better job? If, you know, I hear this stat about the foster care system.
Yeah.
If every church would just foster one child, foster care system would be empty. And I understand it sounds so simple.
Sure.
Sounds so simple. I had a buddy of mine, he was talking about, you know, if you're pro-life, you should be pro-adoption, you should be pro, you know, bringing them in. And I agree completely, 1,000%.
Yeah.
But I would also say, I think it's very stupid on the conservative side when we say, oh, you're pro-immigration, here, take some immigrants into your house. That's stupid. The same way it is stupid to say, oh, you're pro-life, here, take some babies into your house. So that concept doesn't make sense to me. But I would say that there should be inside of everyone's life that is pro-life a desire to be willing to do whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with pro-life only in this area. So I'm gonna unlock some hate mail right here, okay?
Okay, yeah.
I struggle with the death penalty.
Okay.
From a Christian perspective, I struggle with you did something terrible and awful, you deserve to die. Do they deserve to die? Sure, we can have that conversation.
There's a lot of Christians that would, go back to the Old Testament, eye for an eye,
sure,
life for life, those things.
But what did Jesus say?
Okay, if you're a Christian,
you say eye for eye, I say turn the other cheek.
Exactly. So if you're a Christian and you've never struggled with this, you need to go back and start praying. Like, if you're a Christian and you struggle with it and came out the other side and said, okay, I agree with the death penalty, that's you working out your own faith with fear and trembling. But yeah, I think every Christian should struggle with that.
I struggle with it.
I
struggle with the fight for life in the womb.
Yeah.
But not because this child is innocent. He deserves or she deserves life.
Yeah.
This person is horrible. They deserve to die. And I'm just I would rather leave them in jail, cost taxpayers money, keep feeding them, keep.
Okay, so I'm going to unlock some hate mail.
Okay, here you go.
So along the same,
we may not be able to post this one.
Along the same
lines. We may
be
like, Caleb, cut all that out.
Along the same lines, I was reading an article about 2 years ago, and it was this guy, I think it was in Pennsylvania, and he had taken this, I think, 12-year-old girl, locked her in the basement, done awful things to her for 9 years.
Yeah.
For 9 years. Just the type of story that just makes you weep. Just my heart was just wrenched. And I'm sitting there reading the story, and I'm in the Dollar General parking lot. I had stopped my car, and I was just sitting there just mulling over this, and I was just like, man. I just started praying. I was like, God. I started praying for the girl. I don't know if the story was 20 years old or 20 minutes old. I don't know. And I just started praying for the little girl and for God to heal her and all these things. And then, I started praying for the guy. And I was not comfortable doing that. And I was just like, I started thinking, I started praying and asking God, why in the world did you let this happen? Like, why? And I know, I love the question of why does God allow evil things in the world, because it talks. The answer to that is his love. But for me, I started thinking, okay, God, I know that you allow evil because of free will and you want us to love you freely, but why didn't you take this dude out? Why, after one time of this, why didn't you just heart attack, die? He's done. This girl's free. Why in the world didn't you do that? Why didn't you bring judgment on this man? And then all of a sudden, it's like God spoke to me in that moment, and he's like, the same reason I didn't bring judgment against you. And it just gripped me, and I was just like, this is why we see the mercy of God playing out in society, in which we have such vitriol against other people's sin, and we want judgment on that dude's sin because that dude sins differently than I have.
Yeah.
But yet we want the mercy of God for our sins, our hidden things that we think nobody sees.
Totally agree. Listen, Caleb and I, we've had this conversation a lot in his life. Caleb is very low mercy. Him and Maddie, mercy is their lowest spiritual gift. Yeah. They have no mercy for anyone.
Yeah.
It is very much I don't know. It's just very low mercy.
Not their spiritual gifting.
Not their spiritual gifting at all. And so we laugh about it a lot growing up, or like where Caleb would, let's say he's playing softball now. So let's say playing softball, he's playing shortstop, and he misses a throw to the first baseman.
Yeah.
He beats himself up because he can't even show himself mercy because he knows that he's beat that first baseman up so many times because the first baseman missed the ball last week whenever he threw it over there at a perfect throw.
Yeah.
Can't say I'm unfair.
Well, it is unfair because nobody's.
Yeah.
But they're playing church league softball.
Church league softball.
Nobody's like great enough to not make a mistake, right?
Yeah.
And so because Caleb won't show them grace, he can't show himself grace, and so he gets in this weird place to where he just is angry and mad and can't just stop and say it's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so in our lives and our walk with the Lord, we do this so often because I can't show you grace. It will, if we're not careful, get to the place where one of two things: either we can't see our own sins, can't see our own mistakes, our own shortcomings, and so I never show you grace, and I can't, and then it's almost hypocrisy to where I'm like spiritually arrogant. Or the flip side of that is I can't show you grace, and then I'm over here secretly beating myself up because I know that I'm doing some stuff, you know, that's not lining up as well. And instead of, you know, confessing that to my brother and walking it out, I'm hiding it because I'm ashamed that I didn't show you grace earlier.
Yeah.
It's a weird balance, man.
I would say Caleb's on his team in softball, and he's gotten a lot better.
Tons better.
So much better.
He's grown up a lot in the last few years.
Maturity happening
Yeah,
before our eyes.
Praise the Lord.
I tell you, I had a sideways compliment, speaking of softball.
Nice.
Christy Kilman, our children's pastor, she was at our game last night and walked in the door this morning, and she said, Pastor Tony, I was telling Johnny last night, you know, you're pretty quick for a guy your age. And I was like, I don't know what to say about that right now. I said, thanks, I think. Why does it have to be for my age?
Yeah.
But I know what happened. I haven't really slowed down a lot, and I was never quick. So now.
So you just same.
It's kind of like the guys who go in the marathon. And, like, for the 60-year-old age bracket, I think I could do that marathon.
Yeah.
You know? So.
You're the same guy.
Yeah. So, for my age, yeah.
You almost ran for city council.
No.
County seat.
State house.
State house
No,
from
state senate.
State Senate
Yeah.
from your district.
Yep.
Because your district is so small and sparse.
Yep.
The last year, 4 years ago, there was only one person running, and it was a Democrat.
Yeah.
And you're in a very Republican state.
Very Republican state, and I tend to go to the conservative side.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you almost threw your name in the hat to become a state senator.
Yep. Yeah. The way I looked at it was,
so you didn't, because it was a Republican that did.
Yeah, Republican this time.
Who won?
I haven't even looked.
Oh, you need to look. Let's look it up. Who won? Who won
So,
last night, Caleb?
Kent Williams against whatever the Republican was.
So you were throwing your name in the hat, and then you found out there was a Republican running.
Yeah, you know.
You didn't want to go against him in the primaries.
Yeah, listen. I've always been intrigued by politics, and you know, I love history.
What
and
district are you?
I don't know what district I am.
Gallivant's Ferry, Aynor district. I think it's Aynor, Marion, Florence. I want to say District 7, or you guys I think are District 7.
No.
Yeah, so I'd say
Just say did Kent Williams win last night?
But yeah, my thought process was basically this. I think it'd be awesome to be in a place to help influence our state in a more positive direction. And, you know, if I could do that, then I'd love to. So my thought was, it's a filing fee. I'll throw my name in the hat and see what happens. You know, maybe print a few signs, stick them in somebody's yard, not my yard because I live out in the woods and nobody would see it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I would have loved the opportunity. Maybe I'll get it at some point.
Kent Williams won with 54% of the votes to Republican Rodney Berry.
Rodney Berry, yes. Sorry, Rodney.
Come
I was
on,
rooting for you,
man.
bud.
Well, guess what? That means
You know,
4 years from now
4
might be
years
your
from
turn.
now, it might be. Listen, if it's the Lord's will, I throw
So
my.
how do you feel? So in that situation, you have to be in politics.
Yeah.
Like you have to make political statements and take some political stances. Like
Yeah, 100%.
it's gonna be a tough gig for you.
See, I don't think so. I mean, listen. This would definitely not be the first time that a minister's been in politics.
Sure.
You've got Warnock right now down in Georgia on the Democratic side. You know, to me, it's more, instead of political, it's more of just life, you know? I'd be casting my vote for things I think are right, for life, for this state. I would be casting my vote and submitting bills for things that I know would better our state. And so
that's not like a full-time job.
Oh, no, definitely not a full-time job.
The state house is state senate is
Yeah.
more like we come into session 5 or 6 times a year.
I would say
couple days
I would say similar to your state council with the
Okay.
Church of God in South Carolina.
Okay. Interesting.
Similar to that. I mean,
Well, I'm pulling for you, man.
yeah, let's do it.
I hope you
Anybody in the viewing area here that is voting in District
9, 7, 8,
48,
7, 12, 13.
whatever it is, if you're in the Galveston, Ferry, Marion, Florence area. No, I'm just kidding.
Write him in. Tony Basher.
Yeah. Oh, I ripped myself in the last couple of years. Just
Caleb, you have any political aspirations?
No.
I could totally see you being in politics. You've always loved that stuff.
Oh, I love it. I like my job better.
Well, you could do both.
I'm like you. Mama, she'll say whatever on social media. I'm just walking down the
A little
middle
conservative,
line.
yeah.
Just let people know that I love every one of them equally.
Yeah.
They're all beautiful in the eyes of God. That's my goal.
Inside of politics, look up how much was spent on the campaign, because I heard it was supposed to be the most ever, but I think 2020 still outspent them.
I heard yesterday that I don't remember. I think it was $80 million that was spent in Texas just to unseat Ted Cruz.
Wow.
Just in
And
one
they didn't do it.
Senate race, and they didn't do it. Because one guy was
Wow.
saying on the Republican side, he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm glad they did that because they did it, and then they wouldn't."
U.S. 2024 election set to become the most expensive in history, as record high $15.9 billion spent on campaign.
Wow. $15.9 billion spent on campaigning.
Like that.
They could have built a road from Galvin's Ferry Bucksport over Conway.
They could have built a 47-lane highway.
Not really, Tony. This isn't going to cost $2.5 billion to do.
Just throwing a few,
Could have added a few more lanes to it, but not
It's
much.
crazy.
Not much.
Like
501 needs a merge lane the whole way.
whole way.
So $15.9 billion. No, he said.
Yeah.
$15.9 billion. So again, a friend of mine said, could you imagine the good that could have been done in the kingdom of God with $15.9 billion? And as soon as I read it, it kind of turned my stomach a little bit.
Mhm.
Because I thought to myself, you know how many people think that about what's given to the church?
Yeah.
Oh, if you wouldn't give that much to the church, could you imagine how much good would be able to be done? When you in any setting, if I'm giving to Kent Williams, and my expectation is that
Mhm.
Kent Williams is gonna spend some money on marketing and signs and whatever else Kent Williams is spending money on, and I know that's a part of what I'm giving to. But I thought to myself, how many people have those thoughts about the church? Man, if the church, if the $100 that the church spent on that, could you imagine how much good that would do if you gave it to the local homeless shelter or whatever said thing is?
Mhm.
So last time you were on here, we talked about tithing and the value of, how faithful we have been since, before ever being in ministry. So inside of that context, inside of the heart of that pure statement by a young man of, man, God, if you would unlock that sort of financial blessing upon the church, we could do some really amazing things with it. I hear the heart of that, but I also understand that there's a lot of times where you hear stories of ministries not being the best stewards of the money that God has given to us, the same way you hear stories of politicians not being the best stewards of what God has given us. And I would say, just again, unlocking some hate mail, I would say be faithful with what God has given you.
Mm-hmm.
Be righteous with what God has given you. And again, I'm talking about a church setting, also down to your personal finances, instead of looking at the guy down the road and say, he's driving a, $100,000 car or whatever, and you're like, oh man, could you imagine what I could do with that $100,000? Instead of having those thoughts, because comparison game is so dangerous, man.
Yeah.
If we start comparing what comes, when the church starts seeing politics as, look at the money they're bringing in, man, if we could just bring in the money, instead of doing that, or even looking at church down the road, look at the money they're bringing in, we could just stop comparing and saying, okay, God, what have you given to me? How can I be the greatest steward in the world of what you've given to me? Down to our personal finances. Okay, God, what have you given to me? I don't have $100,000, whatever, 500. I don't know how expensive cars are nowadays. I don't have this cool, $500,000 Lamborghini, but I'm going to be faithful with what you've given to me. Mm-hmm. And instead of looking at everybody else's tithes or everybody else's finances or everybody else's income, instead of seeing all of this and then determining whether or not you are blessed, pushing all of that aside and saying, God, thank you for the blessings that you placed inside of my life.
Yeah, I think you touched on a few things. One that I would encourage people to consider is, all the things you could give to. We look at the government and all that they're spending on the election. We could do so much good with that. And people looking at the church and saying, oh my goodness, I could do so much with this tithe money. And I would say, what's your vehicle for the good in the world that you want to be done?
Yeah.
And I would challenge people to find one that overall is better than the church, because
there isn't one.
Exactly.
There isn't one. Let's be honest, man. People talk about taking away the church needs to pay taxes, things of that nature. I did the study on this. I can't even remember the numbers now. Would blow your mind.
Absolutely.
At the benevolence that comes from a local church into the community. The government could not keep up with the impact that's done from a local church. I'm not talking about this local church. I'm talking about local churches all over your communities.
And just the same way the abortion argument, they take the small percentage and amplify it.
Yep.
People take the small percentage of churches that, listen, any organization that has people in it, you can pull one or two clips of, this organization is bad because of XYZ, this person did something bad. But you look at the churches across America and across the world at the good they do, and you will not find a more worthy investment of what God has given you because of the good that is done week in and week out in their communities. And you look at churches, where are they? They're invested in the community. It's not sure, we have international influences here. We have people and missionaries that we're investing in, which is part of it. But by and large, it's the investment in the local community from the local church, and you see that across the country. So I would say, for people who are skeptical of that, listen, talk to your pastor, talk to your church clerk or treasurer or whatever it is, and find out what they're doing, because we only have a certain amount of time on Sunday morning for announcements and different things, but there are things behind the scene. It's not like we announce every single good thing that we're doing. Yeah. So it's important that you look at what the church is doing, and it's changing the world. Along the same lines, people looking at somebody driving a big car, oh my goodness, what can I do with that $100,000 for that car? What are you doing with the $3 you have?
Right.
What are you doing? And you said it, comparison is a thief of joy. I pounded that into my kids.
My dad used to say, we would drive his old truck, and he'd say, we'd leave a drink in it or whatever and spill a drink in it, and he'd say, oh, don't tell me you want a nice new car if you can't take care of my old truck. If you can't keep my old truck clean, how you think I'm gonna trust you
Yep.
with a new car, you know?
Yeah.
If you're going to treat what God has given you here in this moment like this, what makes you think he's going to all of a sudden just say, here goes more?
And one thing that drives me crazy with that argument of look what he's got is, you know, the guy driving the $100,000 vehicle, you have no clue. He might be a multi-billionaire and have poured billions into feeding the homeless. You have no idea. And you're sitting there casting stones against somebody who might be the greatest philanthropist or church donator. He may have built your church.
Yeah, and honestly, like a quote I heard the other day that has just resonated with me so much. He said, everybody likes the view that you have, but nobody likes the climb that it took to get to the view.
That's exactly.
Everybody loves that guy driving that nice car and wishes they had his job or his income or whatever, but nobody likes to put in the work and dedication that it took to get there.
Listen, we see it, talk about political. We see in our political climate just the pursuit of jealousy and the infusion of jealousy into politics to where the rich guy is bad, you know, the big corporation is bad, and you know that we have pounded that drum in politics for the last 5-10 years incessantly, whereas Ronald Reagan, I mean, I saw an interview with him just the other day, and it still rings true, where he's talking about how you've got certain political parties that are just like, oh, listen, we're not going to tax the little guy. We love the little guy. We love the little guy. But man, these big corporations, we're going to get it to them, but no taxes to you. And Ronald Reagan said that is the tax, because these corporations, they get taxed extra. So who do they pass that on to? And my son Eli, he's 11 years old. I was about to say 12. He's 11 years old. And
might be 12 by the time this podcast comes out.
It might be. But I asked him today, this is so easy that an 11-year-old could get it. I said, Eli, if I had a corporation and I sold Rubik's Cubes and I sold them for $2, and then the government came along and said, you're going to be taxed, but yet I have to still get my $1 of profit out, and they tax me another $1. How much do I now have to charge for Rubik's Cubes? And he's like, oh, you got to charge an extra $1 to the customer. And so, you know, it's that mentality of, oh, we're jealous of them, so we can incite everybody against the rich guy. Where the rich guy, I've never seen a poor man give a person a job. And it's the people in our country that have worked hard, and Lord knows, I would love to be one. You know, I would love to be the rich guy giving a guy a job.
Well,
but
maybe if you're elected to the state house, Senate, maybe you could bump into the rich guy.
There you go. That's what I was about to say, because don't get me started. Listen,
we're gonna not get Tony started.
I'm amazed that people walk into the U.S. House of Representatives and have $50,000 to their name and walk out 4 years later millionaires. I don't know how that works on a salary of, what's their salary? $100,000.
$100,000 a year. Crazy.
It's crazy.
Wow.
That math doesn't add up.
That don't mathing.
That's not mathing. But
anyway, thanks for hanging out with us. Love you guys. Thanks for spending some time. Peace out. Let's go.